Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. My name is Zana Ballantyne, and I'm the head of coaches for Peepl Coach. I'm thrilled to be here with you today. For those of you that have joined me before, welcome. And for those that are new, I'll give you a quick spiel about who Peepl Coach are and what we do in a moment. Today's session is all about finding your leadership voice. It's designed to help you to discover and really be the best version of you and create the presence that you need to be your best. So I'd love actually just to create some interaction at the beginning for you to give me a virtual thumbs up. I want to see how many thumbs up I can see or hand raises of how many of you have actually ever been held back from speaking in a meeting or a conversation because you weren't sure that your voice would actually be really heard or valued? Let's see how many hands up we get here. Yeah. So as you can see, you're not alone. So today we are going to explore why your voice, what's held you back, and why your voice wasn't heard. And more importantly, we're going to actually look at some ways to change it. So over the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to help to unpack the stories that shape us, learn from our limiting beliefs that hold us back, and to discover 5 and more, actually, uncommonly known strategies to ensure that your leadership voice is truly heard. So jumping straight into it, if I can share the fact that every human creates invisible scripts. We've all got these. They're formed from our experiences, our beliefs, and the feedback that we've received throughout our life. So these scripts that we have either amplify or diminish our voice. Think about this. These types of experiences shaped you most profoundly and often happened for you before you even considered yourself as a leader. And when I talk about leader, I mean leader of self or leader of others. So perhaps it was, and for me, this was a scenario, a teacher who told you to speak up or not speak until you were asked to be involved. Maybe there was a family dynamic where certain voices were stronger than others, or even early workplace experiences where you were overlooked or even where you were celebrated. And then, of course, there's the cultural messages of who looks like a leader. So, what's interesting about this is that we have what's called a behavioral loop. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's actually quite fascinating. If you're not aware of this part, this is quite true in life. Our experiences create beliefs, and then our beliefs drive our thoughts and our emotions, and then our thoughts actually influence our actions, which therefore shape our results. It's a continuous loop. So, another example of this one is for me, if you've experienced maybe being interrupted frequently in an early career, in your meetings, maybe there was someone that had a stronger voice or experience over you. You might develop that belief as my ideas aren't as important. And therefore, you have thoughts such as that may have come from prior experiences, like at school for me. You should wait to speak for the perfect moment. Wait till everyone's had their say first, which then results in staying quiet or speaking tentatively, which is the action. Ultimately, this confirms your original belief that others don't engage with your input, which is the result. So, my question to you is, what script might you be playing in your own head right now around your own leadership voice? What is it that's holding you back? So what I'm going to encourage you to do, you will get a copy of the slides at the end of today's session. However, I'd encourage you to write down, what script might you be playing in your head right now about your own leadership voice? How are you getting in your own way? So if we're considering then that our
Sorry, I'm echo.
voice
Yes,
shapes our story, Let's move into the space of how can we reframe our leadership narrative. Now, these might seem a little extreme, but it's the most powerful shift in developing your leadership voice is moving from victim of the story to the author, right, of the narrative. And it doesn't mean that you actually deny your experiences because they're real. However, it does mean choosing how those experiences will form your leadership or your voice moving forward. So there's actually a model to this that I'm going to share with you now. It's called the story method. The first step, when you're noticing this narrative in your own head and you know that it needs to change or it's holding you back, stop and acknowledge it when any form of limiting belief comes up. So go, yeah, that's interesting. Why am I thinking that? Then trace the origin, which is the T. There we go. So where did this belief come from? Again, back to my story. I was told at primary school to be quiet until I was asked to contribute. Now, interestingly enough, I've gone the other way, I think, in life now. But where did it come from originally, or where has it come from most recently? The next part to reframe is to observe. Now, I think this is super powerful because we often just keep moving forward. Whereas if you pause long enough to observe the impact, how is this belief affecting my leadership or holding me back in my conversations with others, having my voice being heard? And what would be more powerful? I actually coach myself quite regularly and say, how could I do this differently? Even if it's something that's not a limiting belief. The next part of this model is around rewriting, and I really like the part around with evidence. So what evidence contradicts this limiting belief? So what tells me that this is true or not true? And what would be a more, I suppose, empowering story to have? The last part is yes. Yes to new patterns. Yes to new behaviors. Yes to new ways of thinking. What small action can you take to reinforce the narrative? So let me give you an example that I thought of in writing this session for you today. So this is not about me necessarily, but it's some that I hear from leaders that I coach. I'm not naturally confident, right? It takes me effort. A new story could be confidence is a skill that I'm developing through practice, like muscle. You've got to keep practicing and building the skill. Every time I speak up, I'm building my confidence muscle. Here's another one that I hear a lot. Leaders should have all the answers, right? We've been promoted because we're experts. We should know. People come to us for help. Well, actually, we shouldn't have all the answers necessarily. I believe that the best leaders ask really great questions, create the space for others to think of their answers and wisdom to emerge, I suppose. Another one is around making mistakes. So if I make a mistake, people will lose belief in me as a leader or not think that I'm competent. As opposed to a news story that you could reframe would be around vulnerability and learning from mistakes builds trust and therefore stronger relationships. So one of the things that I encourage you to do as a result of this reframing model for the next week, and it needs to start from today, sooner the better, write down and notice when your leadership voice felt strong. What was different? When have you stepped into a conversation and you have felt like you have been clear and heard and confident? When were you held back? What was the situation? Where did it come from? What was the impact? So use the story model. What was the story that was playing for you, or the old narrative that you want to rewrite? And then most importantly, one small way, just one. It's that 1% better every day. One small way that you can start to rewrite your story for tomorrow. So leadership isn't just about our own narrative and our own limiting belief. Let's talk about followship. What I'd love for you to do now is to get your phones out, please, because I'm going to get you to scan a QR code. This is a Slido activity. It gives you a sense of what everybody else is thinking as well. So have that ready, and I'm going to ask you 2 questions in a moment. I want to tap into your collective thoughts. We've got a lot of people on the call here today, which is great. I'd like you to think of a leader that you genuinely admire, someone whose presence, voice you find compelling, and someone that you're willing or you willingly follow. So when you think of that leader, let me just pop this up. When you think of that leader, what's the one thing that they do, just one thing that they do that creates followship for you? If you scan the QR code and share one thing that they do that creates followship for you. What I will do after today is combine all of these responses when you get a copy of the slides. A lot of listening and speaking calmly with kindness, openness, confidence. It's brilliant. Keep coming. I really like that we've written around allowing to make mistakes as well. It's great. Okay, you keep typing, and I'm going to ask you another question in a moment. Oh, I can't wait to pull all these together. You can see the trends: confident, trust. Yeah, great. Okay. The next question then is, so this is the trait or this is what they do that creates followship. So then the next question is, what's the one quality that they possess that you'd most like to develop in yourself? What's something you want to develop? A lot of confidence. Just great. And calm. Notice in the chat, we've got some additional ones as well. Feel free to scan the QR code if you prefer. Excellent. You know, I've asked a lot of leaders that I've worked with a similar question, and really around what is it that you want to develop um, to create fellowship? What is it that you need to harness still? Typically, I see the responses are around authenticity, and then, what does that look like for the person? But the ability to make others feel heard and valued, um, consistency between words and then what they do, and courage about making difficult decisions. A lot of leaders I work with also have, and I'm looking forward to again pulling together your responses, but they say they want empathy. That's what they want to demonstrate, uh, and what they appreciate when creating fellowship. Here's my key insight. People don't follow you because of your title or your position. They follow your presence. So then, if they follow your presence, let's jump into, here we go. What I believe creates presence and then really excelling your leadership voice. So this quote highlights that exceptional leadership isn't about commanding respect through position or authority. It's about creating a genuine connection through care. When leaders make others feel important, they tap into basic fundamental human needs, the desire to feel valued and significant. We all have that need. And this approach cultivates what is called voluntary fellowship. So when people feel genuinely important and valued by their leader, you don't follow a leader out of obligation, you follow out of inspiration and commitment. The leader becomes someone that's worth following rather than someone that you must follow, I suppose. So this creates psychological safety when this is created. It also creates where people can feel safe to contribute. It also creates intrinsic motivation. It goes as far beyond the compliant need to follow, and genuine engagement and loyalty as well. So here's the interesting challenge. Leaders that truly understand this principle, who focus on making other people feel important rather than themselves, are often the thoughtful, reflective types. So if you can resonate with that, which I think most of you can, these are the leaders that listen more than they speak, consider other people's viewpoints before responding or making decisions, and genuinely care about developing others. But here's the paradox in the whole thing. These are precisely the leaders whose voices are being drowned out in our exceptionally tech-busy workplace and multiple priorities. The very qualities that make these leaders exceptional work against them when it comes to sometimes influencing and having their voice heard. So if you're one of those thoughtful leaders, someone who, embraces the principle of making others feel important, then you need some strategies to make sure that your contributions are heard. So let's look at some of those now. So there's 5 uncommon, I believe. They were fairly new to me when researching this. Known strategies for thoughtful leaders. We've all heard that. I think we mentioned when promoting this program or this session, we've all heard that the squeaky wheel gets the attention, right? But what about the quiet, reflective voices? They often get overshadowed. So let's look at some strategies. The first one I'm going to share with you is what's called the strategic pre-frame. It sounds a bit fancier than it actually really is. So instead of competing for airtime, claim it intentionally. What I mean by that is, so before a meeting or a conversation that is planned, send a message like, I've been reflecting on this. Oops, sorry, I'll just make sure we've muted, sorry. I've been reflecting on this. what was I going to say? Oh, and I've got some thoughts that I want to share during the discussion, because it then lets people know that your voice, you have something to contribute. I think this is a really great strategy. The second one is around your listening superpower, right? This is one of your superpowers if you are a thoughtful, considered leader. So turn your natural inclination to listen into something that is an asset. So after other people have spoken, and I really love this from an introverted type leader, or the quieter ones, after they've spoken, synthesize and kind of go, well, what I'm hearing is, or the themes I'm hearing, or there's potentially an important angle that we haven't considered yet. This positions you as someone who thinks before speaking. Instant credibility. The next one is around quality over quantity. So for those of us that like to talk a lot, this is not a superpower. So instead of trying to match the frequency or find a spot amongst the louder voices in the room, focus on making fewer, more impactful contributions. Aim to speak 2 or 3 times a meeting. Get the information beforehand so that you know how you want to contribute. People will start paying attention because they know that when you speak, it's worth listening to. The fourth of the 5 is the thinking pause. I think this is a leadership superpower. The whole concept of pausing before actually contributing to the conversation. So when, those that have a lot to say in the meeting have finished, don't feel the pressure to jump in straight away. Use a, 3 to 5 second pause and say something like, I'd like to add to this conversation, or I've been thinking about this from, several angles, or, here's a different perspective that I'd like to share. This will help the people to listen more intentionally. And, that pause signals intention, and it draws attention naturally to people that stop multitasking, and it's asking them to actually listen. The 5th one is, and I'll check on chat for a moment because I think some of you have asked some questions. The 5th one is the follow-up advantage. So I really like this one too. Follow up with the meeting with thoughtful insights. Often the best ideas come after the noise dies down. So use your reflective nature. I've been thinking about the conversation we had on X, and there's something we need to add to that I've now reflected. You'll be remembered then as the person who brings valuable perspectives and has the ability to look back on it and add value. So here's your challenge. Choose one of the 5 strategies, shift it to challenge your way of behaving over the next week, and commit to practicing it with intention, and then seek feedback from others. See what impact that's had for them. We are going to give you some additional tips as well around vulnerable authority and ending with clarity and not ambiguity, and they'll come in the tip sheet at the end. I probably don't have time to answer the chat questions, but I will do what I can. If not, I'll follow up afterwards. Just a couple more slides to share with you. Or 3 more concepts, I should say. The silent leadership method. This is really around silence is perceived as 25% more thoughtful and 35% more trustworthy. So what we're talking about here is pausing. Again, after someone's finishing, think about their words, pause intentionally. Then there's an emphasis pause. I think that's pretty powerful. It gives signal to the importance. And then after asking a question, resist the urge to rephrase or answer it yourself. So that's an intentional pause. The next one is the non-verbal voice. So this is actually, I think most of you are probably familiar with this anyway, but I think it's important to consider. Open posture means you're receptive to silence, leaning forward, steady eye contact, relaxed facial expressions. This all contributes to your leadership voice being heard. The next part that I wanted to share with you is the anti-charisma approach. I really like the sound of this one. Jim Collins, who's the author of Good to Great, reveals that the most effective long-term leaders aren't charismatic, larger than life. He's got what they call level 5 leaders, which are quietly confident and consistently authentic. Rather than they focus on results rather than that personal magnetism. So there's a couple of tips that I'd like to share with you. Consistency over flash. So this is around focusing on being reliably excellent, not memorable all the time. Develop your 3 signature strengths. What I mean by that one is demonstrate them consistently rather than trying to be good at everything. And then track your consistency score. Are you the same leader on good days and bad days? The next one is the genuine curiosity method. I think that one pretty much speaks for itself. In fact, I've just noticed that it's got exactly the same text underneath it. But the genuine curiosity method is around asking questions because you genuinely want to know the answer, not just because you want to appear to be engaged. The understated confidence. This one I think is pretty good as well. So speak with quiet certainty rather than loud conviction, and really choose your languaging again. Think about your limiting beliefs. I believe instead of obviously or clearly. Let your actions create reputation rather than necessarily your words. The amplification technique is also another one to try. Try being the brightest in the room and focus on making other people shine, right? Your voice grows stronger when you consistently elevate other people. Leadership superpower right there. Last one is the micro-influencing mapping. Look, neuroscience does reveal that people form a lasting impression within 7 seconds of an interaction. And then, these moments compound over time. So a couple of tips with this one. The 5-second rule. Before responding, ask yourself, how do I want to show up in this moment? Right? And that's you challenging your beliefs, limiting beliefs. The next one is around a leadership ripple technique. How you respond to one person affects how others perceive you by the end of the day. Now, that's worth considering. So finally, just to wrap us up, just to answer some most typical questions that I have been asked by leaders in the past. What if I'm naturally introverted? And I think some questions in the chat have come up about that. Can I still have a leadership voice? Absolutely is the answer. It's not about volume, it's about impact. Some of the most influential leaders are introverts who have learned to speak with intention and create the space. How do I deal with imposter syndrome? This is a common one as well that we get through our people coach programs. How does that affect my leadership voice? Well, it's often evidence that you're growing. The key with imposter syndrome is to reframe it. Instead of like, I don't belong here, my voice doesn't matter. Instead, I'm learning to belong here. Focus on your contribution rather than perfection. Something to think about just to wrap us up. I really like James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. Life is always progressing to the next stage. As you enter a new season, habits that previously serve you may well need to be refreshed or adjusted. My question to you, which one of your current habits have you outgrown and is in need of change? I will endeavour to get back to some of your questions when we send out our tip sheet. To get our tip sheet, we would love for you, please, to share your feedback. This is the first time we've run it in 30 minutes, so it was a bit fast, but I would love to absolutely hear your thoughts. Please scan the QR code. Let us know what you'd like to hear more about next time, and we'll absolutely send you out our tip sheet and a summary of the slides as a result of today. I really appreciate you being here today. Stay on. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to stay for a couple of minutes. And thank you. And I will hope to see you again soon at another one.